Hey everybody, this is Kodak here, and today I am going to be doing my very first breakdown of a Bakugan deck. A deck that I call the Awesome Ones, inspired by the characters from the show. So this is going to be a deck based on the Bakugan used by Dan, Winton, and Leah. So, of course, the Bakugan that I'm going to be using are Pyrus Dragonoid, Haos Pegatrix, and Ventus Trox Ultra. Now, Ventus Trox Ultra is a bit of an interesting choice because of its ability, but all of them are the basic Bakugan that are being used by our heroes on the show. So we have Dragonoid, who has a really low B power. You're going to notice all of these. This is a very below the curve B power situation where we have a 500, a 300, and a 200. So this is a team that maybe struggles a bit in the early game, especially against like the R-list that have 700 or that Darkus Hydrus Ultra that is 800, but there are some checks and balances in this deck that are designed to work with that. Pyrus Dragonoid, of course, currently has one of the strongest evolutions in the game, and it also has a base damage of 5, which means that if you roll this against your opponent and they miss their roll but you hit, you are going to be punishing them really hard for that mistake. Pegatrix may be a 502 on paper, but if it hits a fist, of which this deck provides 3, it becomes a 704, which is devastatingly powerful. And then we have Trox Ultra, who has really pathetic stats, 301, but if it manages to win a fight, you may energize a card in your hand uncharged. So basically, if you win with this guy even once, it puts you a turn ahead. So you actually want to invest pretty heavily in this guy winning, and one of the ways that helps is the cores. The Dragonoid cores I have are plus 250B, plus 3 fists. This is currently the highest one that increases both B power and damage. It's important that you increase B power because, like I said, this is a below average spread, and that also means that its regular fist is the plus 150B too. That is the current strongest generic B power boost. For Pegatrix, Pegatrix brings in double fist to help activate its ability, so it gets the plus 100B, Pyrus and Haos plus 3 damage. That means that Pegatrix can get an even higher damage boost, as well as Dragonoid, and of course another copy of plus 150B plus 2 damage. Trox is where things get a little interesting. Trox brings in a shield and a helix, so the shield is actually going to be minus 300B. Yeah, this is one that you deliberately play aggressively right in front of your opponent's rolling area. You'd expect both players to essentially be putting nothing but positive cores in order to buff themselves, but this core here exists specifically to disrupt your opponent's strategy and make it easier for your own Bakugan to get over that initial power gap. And it acts as a trap. It forces them to kind of try to roll in funny ways and try to get around this thing. It is just a huge nuisance. I mean, your opponent will suspect something when you slam this thing down right in front of them as your second to last puck, but anyway, moving on, the Helix, I went for a pretty basic one, plus 500B minus 1 damage. The plus 500B is, again, the important thing is that these Bakugan are winning their fights, not that they're doing damage, especially in the case of Trox Ultra. You want Trox Ultra to win its fights, so that is why all of the cores I have here are all about increasing the B power advantage as much as possible, while also possibly disrupting your opponent. I don't know if there is a Helix that also inflicts a huge B power penalty, but if it existed, I would probably be using it. Anyway, moving on to the actual deck itself, just a quick little disclaimer in advance. If you see just this backing of the card here, it means that I don't have a full playset of the cards I am talking about yet, and in this case, that would be all of them, because we are starting with 3 copies of Nature's Power. Nature's Power is a Ventus card that, for just 1 energy, inflicts a non-Ventus Bakugan with minus 500 power. So, on turn 1, that is an incredible card to play. It is definitely one that could help one like Dragonoid or Trox Ultra win a fight. I don't have a single copy of this card, and believe me, you'll soon see that it is not from lack of trying, but it is a very, very fantastic card. It is basically a staple of every Ventus deck, as the meta has established so far. This is a mid-game deck, so it focuses on shutting down an aggressive early opponent. A lot of aggressive early opponents can get really high B powers out of the gate. This, along with that really annoying shield core, are designed to help suppress that. And speaking of 1 power boosts, we also have Super Shot. Super Shot is for 1 energy, you get plus 300 B power to any one Bakugan. This is also a really nice card to have, thanks to that boost. It's not quite like the Aquos Power card, which gives you plus 100 B power for free, although that's more designed to go into flow effects, and even then it can really only change barely losing into a tie most of the time. But Super Shot, it also works a little bit better. It's a bit more reliable than Ventus, than the Ventus Nature Power, because it can work on anything and it does not care whether or not your opponent has Shadow Strike or is Ventus, unlike Nature's Power. So those two cards combined on early turns, you can get two of them into play, and that will give you a lot of power very, very quickly. Up next, we have Light's Courage. It is a 2-cost ability card, which gets plus 400B. That is basically in line with every single attribute has a 2-cost plus 400B power card. Haos is the only one that gets a plus, because Haos is the attribute that's all about getting big B power boosts. So Light Courage also has an effect for domination. If your Bakugan hold the most Baku cores, it becomes plus 800, and this is the biggest boost that we're going to be getting off of a single card. Plus 800 is nothing to sneeze at, especially for just 2 energy on a single card, and this deck does have several cards that make it easier for you to obtain domination, so there is a very good chance that you'll be able to get this card off. And one of those cards is Inferno Wings. Yes, another one that we have 3 of, and I have 2 copies of Inferno Wings and 0 copies of Nature's Power. You can see how crazy this is getting. But Inferno Wings is fantastic just because of its utility. What it does is not only does it give you plus 300 B power, which makes you much more likely to win, it gives you that nice little boost of power, it also removes all Baku cores enemy Bakugan hold and negates their effect. So if your opponent has landed on one of their big powerful Fire Fist cards and are getting ready to deliver the utter smackdown, Inferno Wings kicks that core, and a lot of the Bakugan who have their abilities activated, which a lot of opponents have built their decks around, they lose that the moment you play Inferno Wings, and it kicks all of the cores off of all of their Bakugan. So it repopulates the area, although I've gotten clarification, they are the ones who replace the Baku cores, but it instantly gives you domination if you are in a battle. So any cards that have domination effects will be able to activate when Inferno Wings plays. And Inferno Wings is also a fantastic card to be followed up with Cutepocalypse, another 3 of. Cutepocalypse is a card, again, with very good utility. It has plus 500 B power, not very good for the cost of 5 energy, even Pyrus gets higher B power boosts than that, but it's mostly, it does have that utility which helps you get over your opponent, but it also has the effect of domination. So if your Bakugan hold the most Baku cores, draw 3 cards. This is going to be your serious draw power card. Since Inferno Wings and another card I have in the deck called Consort both technically activate domination for exactly 1 cost less, this is the perfect follow-up to play if you're not playing an evolution card. Also, another fun thing that this does is it means we have a 4 cost, 3 cost, 2 cost, and 1 cost ability cards that boosts B power. So we have 1 for every cost, so we have essentially 1 for every situation, although Nature Power in there too, although I don't have a copy of it, but it gives you a B power boost card for every situation, and you get some more utility as you get higher up. Moving on, up next we have the card The Sky's Hymn. Finally, one that I have 3 copies of. The Sky's Hymn is a rare card that, for the cost of just 1, allows you to scry the top 3 cards of your deck and put them back in any order. You can move a flip card into place. You can pick a card that you want to save from your opponent's damage, and if you're dominating, then you draw a card. And the fact that this thing costs 1 and allows you to also essentially cycle it as long as you're dominating makes it a very good card to rescue a card from the trash heap, or to set up a certain somebody who is probably in this deck. Up next, we have Turn to Energy, 3 copies. Turn to Energy is a very basic ramp card. It's not a bad choice for the card to play in your second turn, especially if you miss with your Bakugan. I've heard people say Turn to Energy is a bad idea because it means you're not able to play B-power boosting cards that turn, but Turn to Energy, it gets you a turn ahead even on turn 2, And it also has an additional beneficial effect that, even if you do lose the fight because you didn't play turn to energy, might turn things around for you anyway. Anyway, it's basic, cheap, early Ventus ramp. Up next, we have Consort, another card that I have 3 copies of. Consort is a card that allows you to grab any core from the field and attach it to one of your Bakugan. So I could grab that Helix that gives me the plus 500, or I could grab one of my opponent's magic shields that they've placed close to themselves, which will clearly offer me a huge boost, and I can use that to get ahead of my opponent. For the cost of just 3, the only other ability cards that give a bonus on +3 is Bone Defense, which is plus 700, but it does not have the additional beneficial effect of getting an additional core. It means that I am guaranteed to activate Pegatrix's effect. It means that I can choose a large bonus from the field and deprive my opponent of it. I can, even if I'm losing, move it to a Bakugan that I still have in play. It allows me to manipulate the field. It allows me to gain domination. It is a card that I think has gone underappreciated. Up next, 3 copies of Dan Kouzo. Oh dear, this deck just got expensive. Dan Kouzo is the strongest card in the game. He ignores mana disadvantage, he ignores hand disadvantage, because all you have to do is get a Bakugan to stand, and it allows you to flip the top card of your deck and potentially play it for free. And if you're playing and if you manage to get Trox Ultra to win, or if you manage to play turn to energy, you can get this guy out on turn 3 and start giving your opponent a huge headache. 3 copies just to make sure that you draw him so that you can get him into play, and if your opponent takes it out with like Garganoid's Gaze or Cinder Coil or something like that, you can get him back into play and get back into action. And yes, Dan can play himself with it. It might miss the timing, but it's still easily the strongest card in the game. It's also, unfortunately, the most expensive, especially since the one I'm packing here is a Hex card. I've only pulled 1 so far. Up next, we have 2 copies of Diamond Trox Ultra. So there are a couple of cards that are too awesome here, and they are some of the evolutions. Diamond Trox Ultra is one of the few cards that is Diamond that actually works. Funny enough, I got this in my regular Trox Ultra, but apparently I was supposed to not get this card. Apparently this was supposed to be packed in with the Diamond Trox, so somebody who bought a Diamond Trox Ultra is going to be getting the other card, I fear. But yeah, for just 5 energy, which I can get in as few as 3 turns if I win with Trox Ultra on turn 2 and manage to play turn to energy, he becomes a 1408 beater. That is pretty insane. 1408 is very, very powerful for a cost of 5. Like, you took a look at the Diamond Hyderus Ultra, he becomes a 1509 for nearly double the cost. The Diamond Maxitor becomes a 1515 for double the cost, for completely double the cost. So those are 2 Bakugan that barely get the tiniest of G-Power advantages for much higher costs. This guy is economical, and once you get Trox Ultra to win, even just once or twice, it has outlived its usefulness, and Trox Ultra Diamond will cover the rest of the way. And of course, we have a 2 of Diamond Pegatrix, Titan Pegatrix. It's cost 4, so it's a bit cheaper than Diamond Trox and the other evolution which we will have. But it's only a 1004, but it becomes a 1509 if it lands on a Fist Core or has a Fist Core moved to it with Consort. So your opponent is basically staring down the barrel of a 1400 and a 1500, as well as 3 copies of Titan Dragonoid. Yeah, I've pulled 2 Titan Dragonoids and not a single copy of Nature's Power. Come on. Anyway, Titan Dragonoid is, I think, the second most highly valued card in the game right now. Titan Dragonoid, it is essentially a 1012 because it comes with Double Strike. Now, this deck doesn't pack anything that actually increases damage, aside from, of course, the cores, which Titan Dragonoid benefits from double, but it becomes a 3012 if Dan Kouzo is in play, which for 5 is just insane. So your opponent, very quickly just a few turns into the game, will be looking down the barrel of a 14, a 15, and a 3000. Those are not good odds, and they will be sweating. This is basically your win condition, is to get these evolutions into play by roughly turn 5 or 6 after surviving your opponent's initial onslaught, and then just beating them down with unimaginable power. And yes, this deck does have flip cards. I know I criticized them, but these are the few that I think are actually worth running. First, we have 3 copies of Repel Destruction. Repel Destruction is the Ventus 1-cost flip because it blocks Darkus and Pyrus. What are the attributes most known for causing lots and lots of damage? It's Darkus and Pyrus. What is being used in all the aggro decks? Darkus. So for just 1 energy, you can stop all of that damage happening to you with Darkus or Pyrus. And the only other thing I would think other than this would be Halt Unknown, because that stops Darkus and Aquos, and a lot of aggro decks are also using Aquos because of all of its cheap flow card effects. But either way, you're getting some really good coverage from one of those 2 cards. Either of those cards that stop Darkus are going to give you excellent coverage, and Repel Destruction is one of the reasons that I like Ventus in this deck. And finally, we have the Ventus stop card, 3 copies of Tiger Reflex. Rawr. Tiger Reflex is basically the Ventus version of Pact of Darkness. If you have the most energy cards in play, this card is free. And you can make that happen pretty soon. If you're feeling pretty confident, you can send out Trox Ultra on turn 1 and turn this card on. You can play Turn to Energy on turn 2 and turn this card on. You could send out Trox Ultra on turn 2 and turn this card on. It becomes completely free as long as you have more energy than your opponent, which this deck can do very, very quickly between Trox Ultra and turn to energy. And after that point, it stops all non-Ventus damage, which Ventus damage. The only like Ventus card that has damage is like the Hyper Mantinoid, which is really, really bad in the early game because it's an evolution with a base damage of 4. And come on, man. Most of the damage you're going to be eating comes from Darkus and Pyrus and maybe Aquos. So Tiger Reflex is going to give you tons of coverage. It's also probably the only chance this deck has of stopping Aurelus outside of the use of Nature's Power. So, that's the deck. That is the deck, the Awesome Ones. It is based on the 3 characters, although, funnily enough, only Dan actually made it into the deck, but otherwise this was a fun little experiment. Maybe a bit of an expensive one because of the use of Titan Dragonoid. Maybe, until you can get those, you could try to use Hyper in its place, or maybe try to mix in Winton or E instead of using all those Dans, but that's the Awesome Ones deck. It was really fun to make this deck. I mean, I can already think of a few ways I would optimize it, but otherwise, this was a very fun deck to make, and if you want to try to make it yourself, by all means, give it a shot. It might actually turn out to be pretty good. So, that is my deck profile for the Awesome Ones, and until next time, this is Kodak signing off.
Powers in our hand, take a stand, saving every